youth?
The youth, I think it's a little more sophisticated these days. Kids have tougher decisions to make. There's a lot more input, media input, societal thing. Information comes to kids a lot quicker than it did 15, 16 years ago. The program itself, I see changes too as well. It's been evolved where it's a lot more community-based, victim-based, and the youth have come to the board based as well. So there's a real balance between the three.
We had a kind of a change in philosophy in the year 2000. We started to look at the way that we handled juvenile offenses in our diversion program, and we realized that the victim didn't play as large a role as they should. Typically in a retributive justice system, it's very offender-centric, and it's more focused on, you know, punishing the youth in a punitive way, and also providing services and helping the youth, and it excluded the victim more than we liked to see. And so we adopted a philosophy called Balanced and Restorative Justice, which looks at the way in which the offense affects the victim, the community, and the offender. And it asks the youth to you know, figure out a way, or to participate in a process where they can figure out a way to make things right with their victim and their community, and to make sure that they don't get in that same kind of trouble again in the future.
That's now that's great. In order to make sure that, you know, everybody in the process who's been affected can you know, at least work together to hopefully make a difference in their communities. What about the victims if they don't want to participate? I mean, these are low-level offenses, but do they have the option, let's say, if somebody writes them a letter that they're sorry, if they don't want that letter? How does that work?
Well, absolutely. We, when there is a victim for an offense, we send them a letter explaining what's going on with the case. We send them an expense list in case they incurred any losses as the result of the offense, and we send them a victim impact statement where we give them an opportunity to say what the effects were of the offense, you know, since the arrest. Because when we sit down at the table, we're given the police report, and so we have all this information about what happened right up until the time of the offense, and then we really don't know what's happened with the victim since then. And this gives them an opportunity to kind of fill in those gaps in what the effects were after the incident, what the emotional effects were, what the financial effects were, and what their recommendations are for the board as far as what they would like to see in the final disposition in the diversion agreement. It's logistically, we can't have the victims at the diversion meetings. And when you have, say, two kids with a history of schoolyard fights, it's probably not a good idea to stick them in a room, you know, at night with three volunteers and another kid who they have a history of fighting with. You know, so it's there is a limited extent to which they can be involved, and many victims will send all that paperwork back, and some just choose not to, and that's fine too. Sometimes they've already put it to bed, it's behind them, and they just want to move on. So maybe they had a $10 or $15 loss, but it's not worth it to them to think about it and go back and dwell on it and fill out the paperwork, and they just want to let it go, and that's fine. So to the extent that they want to be involved and they want to have a voice in the process, we provide the opportunity, but certainly it's not mandatory.
And that's a nice change. Now, you know, Jim, I was going to ask you if you could help walk our viewers through kind of what it's like. Now, you're in Renton, and you're the advisor there for the Community Accountability Board. Let's take an offense. You know, let's take your classic theft. That's a low-level offense, a small item. And what would happen? Do you get the police report, and then they come in the evening? Walk us through that.
Our board starts at 6:30. We have everybody show up there. All the families are there. The board members are there. The advisors are there. We usually handle 6 cases a night. So 3 cases will go to one board, 3 cases will go to the other board. And we start by reading the statement of understanding that explains the program to all the youth and their parents to make sure they understand what they're doing and what they're getting into and what the responsibility is. Once the statement of understanding is read, then the families are brought to the boards themselves in to see the committee members. The committee members, before the families have gotten there, have reviewed the cases. We go over the files. We see what the police report says. We see what the background is for the youth, whether he has a history of offenses or not, or whether she or he has been through diversion and kind of get an idea who that person is. We come in, we introduce ourselves, and the family introduces themselves. We again go over the statement of understanding to make sure they have any questions. If everybody's understanding what they're doing, then we sign off on the statement of understanding and we explain the process. The process is we talk to the youth first, and then we talk to the family, usually the mother or the father or both.
So separately, so the youth comes in first and talks to the board.
We address them as a family, and then the second step is the youth will come in alone. And they're explained prior to that what's said in that session stays in that session, and we don't share between the family and the youth, so there's confidentiality, so everybody feels safe in what they're exchanging with the board. Once we've talked to the youth, we sit down, we find out about the offense. We try to focus in on what decisions the youth made to get themselves into that situation. Where in the process did the youth understand that he or she was committing a crime? And by doing that, it really helps the youth take responsibility for their actions and understand that there's some ownership to that. Then we talk a little bit about what's going on in school. And then after school, what's kind of going on in the family. We want to see the holistic child. We want to see what's going on for this person. So when we develop a plan or restitution, not restitution, excuse me, but we develop a resolution for this situation, that it's something that will help the child, it will make the victim whole, and also give the youth an understanding of how their actions affect the community.
Now that process, how long does that process take? Does it vary?
It can vary anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours. It just depends on the families. A lot of parents get there, and they're sitting down, they're frustrated with their child, and they finally get to talk to someone about what can we do. So sometimes the parents will talk longer than the kids do. Sometimes the kids talk longer. But actually in my boards and what we try to do within the program is we try to keep it within a 30 to 45 minute time period.
And so then, once they finish that evening, then there's a recommendation for them.
Yeah,
Correct.
after we've talked to both, talked to them separately, the board meets within and discusses what's appropriate, and we come up with a contract, a service contract, whether it's community service, counseling, restitution, apology letters. The boards can get very creative on how they feel would best affect the situation. And then we bring the family and the youth back in together, and we offer them, and we show them what we've come up with for what's resolution to the situation.
And a couple things I'd like to add is that one of the things that we look for is to look at whether, this is just the result of a kid who just made a kid decision. They made a bad choice, which is part of being a kid and part of growing up. That they had a lapse of judgment and they did something that was probably not the best idea to do, and they just need to be reminded that that's not a good idea. And for those kinds of kids, the diversion agreements are going to be different than the kids who really the offense is a symptom of a deeper problem or skill deficit. And for those kids, we're more likely to refer to counseling or skill building classes to help them address whatever issues or skill deficits they have that have contributed to them getting in trouble in the future. A few of the skill building classes that we have that are offense specific are we have an anti-shoplifting class for kids who have a problem with shoplifting. It is provided by the National Association for Shoplifting Prevention, and it's a two-part class. Part of it is a correspondence course, and the other part is a Saturday, all day on a Saturday. And it's extraordinarily effective. It has a nationwide recidivism rate of under 3%, which is really quite phenomenal.
That's phenomenal.
So we have the anti-shoplifting class for kids who get in trouble because they have, a problem controlling their anger, and they wind up getting in fights at school and that kind of thing. We might refer to anger management. And for kids who have a history of acting in an assaultive way towards their parents, or using threats, intimidation, and/or violence to address or to get what they want in the home. Then we have a program called Step Up, which is another really great program that's 6 months that helps kids find better ways to get what they want than to bully or or act violently or intimidate their parents.
Now, let me ask you this, and I guess, Jim, when you're there at the community accountability boards and you are coming with this proposed action plan for them, do they have input into it? And when you come back and say, these are the things that we want, maybe anger management, or is it something that basically this is what we'd like you to do and they can take it or leave it?
Actually, through the process in our boards prior to getting there, a lot of times we'll ask the parent, what do you feel your child needs?
Okay, so
and we'll
you have input.
ask the youth as well, too. So I think the earlier process, we get that input because we want to hear what's effective. We really want to develop a plan that when the youth and the family participate, we want them to be successful, because one of the things we want to achieve in the program is to be able to have the family feel that there's a commitment to the process.